What is up, everybody? Welcome to the MMA Engine. This is Probability. We're going to take a data-driven look into UFC Vegas 57. We have Arman Tsarukyan going against Mateusz Gamrot. Very good card, 12 fights to break it down. I am here, as always, with everybody's favorite uncle, Uncle Weezy. What is up? You looking forward to the show and the card?
Yo, what's up, Brady? What's up, chat? I'm looking forward to this quite a bit. 12 great fights. Some decent opportunities here on the over-under lines. There have been some of these lines that have moved. Other ones haven't. Got some interesting 5-round analytics in the main event to look at, and I can't wait to chop it up with you guys.
Heck yeah, it's going to be fun. I have a ton of action on a lot of these prop bets, so can't wait to talk them through with you, Weezy, in the chat as well. Before we get started, guys, if you guys can please hit the like button, also subscribe here to the MMA Engine. Let's keep growing the channel. And then next week is the pay-per-view card. We're going to do some extra content as well, so make sure you are subscribed to not miss out on all of that. And as always, we got to shout out the chat before we get started. We got Brandon in the chat. First one in here. We got HD_2. We got Matthew Campbell. We got Paul in the chat. What is up, Paul? We got Evan L from the chat. What is up, Evan? We got Mushroom. We got Jussie. And we got Kiwi hanging out with us. If y'all can hit the like button, it is much appreciated as always. But I say we start with the very first fight of the night. And we have Jin Yu Fry going against Vanessa Demopoulos. And the over-under is set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 rounds is minus 215. The under 2.5 rounds is plus 175. The fight goes to decision is minus 190. And the fight doesn't go to decision is plus 155. This is on Bet Online. Weezy, what is sticking out for the very first fight of the night?
Well, it's what sticks out is that the time props seem to be almost useless for this fight, right? So we see that right here that Vanessa Demopoulos 5 of 7 wins inside the distance, and Jin Yu Fry 3 of 6 losses inside the distance. So there's a pretty good chance here for Vanessa Demopoulos finish. And then we look, Jin Yu Fry 3 of 11 wins inside the distance, less than a 30% win rate by finish. And Vanessa Demopoulos in 4 losses has never been finished. So it feels like instead of betting the fight doesn't go, you should just bet Vanessa Demopoulos inside the distance. And then instead of betting the fight goes, you're probably thinking Jin Yu Fry by decision. When we move over here to the UFC finish rate for these two ladies, we see that 1 of 3 wins has come inside the distance. That was obviously for Vanessa. And 1 of 4 combined losses has been inside the distance, and that was for Jin Yu Fry. So only 2 of their 7 combined fights have finished inside the distance. So that means that we're overpaying for the fight doesn't go to decision at plus 155 here by about 10.6%. Based on their combined wins in their combined fights that have finished inside the distance. And for the fight goes to decision here at minus 190, we can see that we're getting about a 6% break here. 5 of their 7 combined fights have went to decision. That's 71%. And we're only paying about 65.5% on the line. So the prop template is favoring fight goes to decision. But right now, Jin Yu Fry by decision is plus 110 on FanDuel, and fight goes to decision is minus 190. And I just feel like, Vanessa has shown a very poor ability thus far in the UFC and even pre-UFC to win minutes. So I would go with Jin Yu Fry by decision here, or if you were thinking under, I would go Vanessa Demopoulos inside the distance, or maybe the Vanessa Demopoulos finish only prop for this fight, because just the way that I'm reading it after watching tape, Brady, is that the time props aren't as good as the props for each individual fighter, either finishing by decision or finishing inside the distance.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's another fight way later in the card that sticks out like that as well. But yeah, I agree. Jin Yu Fry plus 110 by decision. That's on FanDuel. On Bet Online, it's minus 125. And then, like you said, the scorecards equals no action, finish only. On Bet Online, that is plus 120. But if you have DraftKings, it is like plus 165, something like that. And then I think on FanDuel, it's like plus 150, something like that. So I think it's a great way to play it. I think if this does finish inside the distance, it's probably like a Vanessa Demopoulos armbar. And then if it does go to decision, I think Jin Yu Fry does get it done. So, yeah, if anything, if I was forced to bet fight goes or doesn't go, it would be that fight goes. But like you said, might as well play that Fry by decision. And it's plus money, which kind of stuck out to me. But we'll move on to the next fight. We have Mario Batista going against Brian Kelleher. We have minus 120. Fight doesn't go. The over-under is set at 2.5. The over 2.5 minus 135. The under 2.5 is plus 105. The fight goes to decision is -110, and the fight doesn't go to decision is -120. Weezy, what's sticking out on this one here?
Well, this is a bantamweight fight. Bantamweight fights finishing around 49.44% of the time. And here we are at the UFC finish rates for both fighters. We got 19 combined UFC fights between Kelleher and Batista here, and 63.2% of those fights have finished inside the distance. That is 13.7% better than the divisional finish rate of 49.44% and 9.7% better than the fight doesn't go to decision line, which I saw available, I believe, at -115 on Caesars. So I like that fight doesn't go here. One of the things that we like is that both, not only are these guys both finishing at over a 53.5% rate, but they're both getting finished at a much higher rate. And this is at the UFC level, 75% finish rate for both of these guys in their losses combined. So when we add up those wins and those losses, we're seeing 12 of 19 finishing inside the distance. So the prop template definitely prefers the fight doesn't go here at -115. If we go down here to the fight goes, we see we're overpaying by about 12.7% based on the implied probability of the fight goes to decision line, and about 13.7% based on the divisional decision rate of about 50.5%. So this is one I'm looking at, and I like the fight doesn't go. You know, Kelleher's really great with those guillotines. We've seen him get popped and hurt on his feet lately, and most recently in the Umar Nurmagomedov fight. Bautista's got good length and good power in his stand-up. And, Kelleher's got some really good submission grappling. And Batista has been finished in both of his losses. He's gotten chin checked by Trevin. I want to say Jones. It's not Jones. It is?
I think
so. Yeah. He got chin checked by him. So, there's a possibility for a finish here. And I love that 75% of their combined UFC losses have been inside the distance and 54.5% of the wins. So at -115, even though we're overpaying by about 4.05% based on this 49.44% divisional finish rate, it's still a veritable bargain based on the implied probability of the line and how their finish rates in the UFC have combined to look in comparison to that benchmark. So, yeah, definitely leaning fight doesn't go for the second fight.
Yeah, this is a tricky one for me. I would lean fight doesn't go if anything as well. But I guess the one thing that scares me is Kelleher has only been knocked out once in 37 fights. When he is getting finished, it is by submission. And Batista does have a decent amount of submissions on his record, but I'm not sure if Batista is going to go out there and submit Kelleher. I guess that'd be my one concern. But yeah, the numbers add up, both finish rates, both finish loss rates. I think if anything, it'd be that fight doesn't go there. And like I said, -115 on Caesars. It's -142 on FanDuel, -120 on BetOnline. So that -115 is the best price out there. I don't know. I'm kind of leading Batista by decision, so my analysis doesn't really add up. But maybe Batista could club and sub him. Kelleher's now 35 years old. I don't know. This one's kind of tricky for me because, again, Kelleher has been submitted most of those times. I think he's been submitted 6 times, right?
It's a lot of times, dude. The dude has definitely been submitted a hell of a lot more than he's been knocked out. But the important thing to mention about this template, Brady, is that we're all watching tape too. You know, we can make purely data-driven decisions if we backtest and we find which indicators are statistically significant and which ones were more noise. And we haven't done that yet. But what we can do is determine with our eyes whether we think that fight is finishing inside the distance or not, and then let the data be our guide as to whether we're overpaying, underpaying, or right on paying for the line. And then we can just compare whether we're getting that value or not with which way our read is taking us. And hopefully that's the kind of value that people will find in this show, is to just use the data that we're providing here in order to mesh with how you're seeing the fights and then make the best bets that you can make. So I don't know if I'm running to the window to bet -115 here, but the prop template is blessing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one that stuck out earlier in the week. But like I always say, I like when my analysis lines up and the prop time it lines up. But even sometimes, like when it's just based off of the numbers, like you got to take a shot. So yeah, it definitely does stick out. I don't have access to that minus 115 personally. But if I was forced to either bet the fight goes or the doesn't go, it's definitely the fight doesn't go. I think this fight does have a good chance to finish.
Agreed. Agreed 100%.
Heck yeah. So let's keep moving on to the next fight. This is a fight that I do have a bet on. I actually have two bets on this fight because I bet the fight doesn't go on Sunday and then I doubled down the next day. I really like this spot, but yeah, the line has moved quite a bit since then. We have the over under set at 2.5. The over 2.5 is minus 140. The under 2.5 is plus 110. The fight goes to decision is minus 120. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 110. I did bet it Sunday night at plus 120 on Bovada, and then I bet it the next day plus 120 as well. And I was even tempted to triple down and bet it plus 100 on DraftKings the next day, but that line moved to minus 110. So we have minus 105 best line out there on 5 dimes, minus 110 on DraftKings. Weezy, this is one that really stuck out to me. I think both guys are really good finishers. Both guys are really good at getting finished. And JP Buys did go to his very first decision in his last fight. And prior to that, all his wins and losses were finishes. Outside of he had a DQ win as well, which was in the second round. So yeah, I like violence here, and it looks like a lot of people are agreeing these lines are getting smashed.
Yeah, and you see all that green there. I mean, you just see that under the fight doesn't go, just big blocks of solid green. And that's because we've got 18 of 21 combined wins for Durden and Buys inside the distance, 85.7%. 6 of 8 losses, that's 75%. And you add that up and you got an 80% total of 30 total fights that have finished inside the distance here for these two guys. So, we see just big blocks of green there, which is telling us to bet it. And then we can go over here to the UFC data. And even though we've only got an 8-fight sample size, we're still seeing 5 of those 8 fights finishing inside the distance. That's 62.5%. The fight doesn't go to decision line sitting at minus 110 right now, has a 52.38% implied probability. So according to the 62.5% finish rate of these guys' 8 combined UFC fights, we're getting a 10% break over the minus 110 line. And these guys are finishing at a 22.7% rate better than the benchmark for the division, which is 39.82%. So this is not quite an overpriced line yet, even though it's moved. We're overpaying by 12.56% if we compare the implied probability of the line to the divisional finish rate of 39.82%. We subtract 52.38%, and we see we're overpaying by about 12.56% there. But usually when we see these numbers where the divisional finish rate minus the implied probability is more than 10% off, it means that the street, the sharps are betting the under. And that's exactly what's happening here. When you've got 4 of 5 UFC losses combined being inside the distance, that screams under. And usually when we get that kind of a combined loss rate, Brady, we're paying minus 200, minus 250. But in this case, we're paying minus 110. So we haven't seen Buys or Durden show the best conditioning yet. And both of these guys come out in the first round looking to finish. So this is another one where I'm really seeing violence. And the prop template, as you can see up here on the top half, is just all green. And if we go down here to the bottom half, I mean, damn, dude, look at all that red down there for fight goes to decision. Look at all that red, especially over here. Just blocks of red. 2 of 8 losses go to decision. Only 3 of 21 wins that go to decision. 5 of 30 fights. It's not enough. It's not nearly enough. So this is definitely a smash spot for fight doesn't go.
Yeah, and we usually like targeting those kill or be killed fighters, but you could argue both of these guys are kind of kill or be killed as well. So yeah, I like it. The only thing I don't like is that it is 125 pounds. That's why I'm not like going out there and max betting this or nothing like that at plus money. But I do think it's a very good violent spot to consider there. But we'll move on to the next fight. This is an interesting one. This is one I've kind of been looking at all week. We have Sergey Morozov going against Raulin Paiva. And we have the over-under set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 minus 155. The under 2.5 is plus 125. The fight goes is minus 150. And the fight doesn't go to decision is sitting at plus 120. Weezy, this is one that kind of It sticks out. It's at plus money. Both guys get finished a ton. And I guess, I don't know, the only concern really is, Paiva's not really a finisher. It's more so Morozov being the better finisher there. But again, like, both guys have been finished a lot. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this one and curious to see the numbers on this one as well.
Yeah, so let's just do a quick little refresher here. Kelleher Batista, high finish rate in losses, 66.7%, 10 of 15. Bays Durden, 6 of 8, 75%. Then we come to Paiva Morozov. It's even more. It's 80%, 8 of their 10 combined wins, 5 of 6 of their combined losses inside the distance. 5 of 6 for Morozov, 3 of 4 for Paiva. So these guys are getting finished a ton. But we look over here at the finish rates, and we see Paiva's only finishing 1/3 of his pro wins and only 25% of his UFC wins. While for Morozov, it's 11 of 17. So it's almost a 2/3 finish rate here for Morozov. So Morozov's the better finisher than Paiva, but both of these guys have shown very little durability thus far. So when we go over here to the UFC lines, we see that 5 of their 10 combined fights have finished inside the distance, but it's a little confusing because 4 of their 5 losses have been inside the distance, but neither one of these guys has shown the ability to really finish at the UFC level either, as Morozov 0 of 1 and Paiva only 1 of 4 in his wins. So 1 of 5 wins inside the distance, but 4 of 5 losses inside the distance. So it's a difficult one, and we're not really getting value one way or another here. We're getting maybe 4.5% value based on the 50% combined finish rate for these two guys compared to the 45% line. And during the divisional finish rate is 49.4%, so we're right on with that. So this is one I'm staying away from because we've got two guys that really can't finish, but when they lose, they are getting finished. So it's hard to know if they're good enough to finish the other one. I'm just leaning Morozov here on the money line. But as far as the time props go, that divergence between the wins and the losses is telling me to stay away.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely a tough one there. Both guys have been finished so much. Let me ask you this. What is the finish rate for Morozov?
Morozov's finish rate is 0 of 1 at the UFC level and 11 of 17. So it's almost 65% for Morozov as a pro in 17 wins.
And what is Paiva's?
It's 7 of 21 wins are inside the distance, so only 33%.
So this is interesting. They have the finish only is sitting at minus 120 for Morozov.
Yeah, that's not a bad look at all. Now, the reason why they would give Morozov less of a chance to finish, or in this case, just a slightly better chance to finish than Paiva when they have the implied probability of Morozov winning the fight is higher, is because of the 5 of 6 losses coming inside the distance for Morozov. But Paiva, not much of a finisher. So, I think that if we are to see a finish out of one of these two guys, it's probably the guy that's finishing 2/3 of their wins out of 17 wins, rather than it's the guy that's finishing 1/3 of their wins in 21 wins. So, yeah, the finish only prop is probably the better way to play this fight for in terms of going with fight goes or fight doesn't go. If you like that fight doesn't go, maybe you just bet the Morozov finish only prop.
Yeah, because Paiva hasn't finished anybody not named Mark De La Rosa since 2017. Since 2017, decision, knockout loss, knockout win against Mark De La Rosa, decision, and then knockout loss against Sean O'Malley. So, yeah, I think that finish only would be the one way I'd look at it. Minus 120, that kind of stuck out to me.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's good. We got a couple of finish-only props here for Vanessa Demopoulos and Sergey Morozov, and we got a couple of fight doesn't go to decisions for Kelleher Bautista and Baez Durden so far.
I like it. All right, guys, we have 50 in here. If you all can please leave a like. Let's get those likes up. Also subscribe here to the MMA Engine if you do not already do so. We will move on to the next fight. We have T.J. Brown going against Shayilan Nuerdanbieke. We have the over-under set at minus 215, over 2.5. The under 2.5 is plus 175. The fight goes to decision is minus 180. and the fight doesn't go to decision is plus 150. Weezy, this is one I looked into on Sunday, and it's weird. Like the numbers really line up, and my analysis lines up, but the fight doesn't go. But the fight doesn't go is plus 150, which is like the same line as the Jinyu Fry fight. So I did put a half unit on the fight doesn't go at plus 150. Both guys can finish. Both guys can absolutely be finished. And then what I also did was I put a half unit on TJ Brown inside the distance at a crazy, I think it was like plus 250 for Brown inside the distance. I think he finishes Nuerdanbieke. Nuerdanbieke has been finished a ton, 6 by sub. And, Brown's legit on the mat. Like he almost finished Charles Rosa. If it was anybody other than Charles Rosa, he would have got that sub. So yeah, I really like violence here. And it's sneaky. Like I thought this line would move a ton, but the line has actually gotten better on some books. Plus 155 fight doesn't go for this fight on 5 dimes there. So I like the fight doesn't go. I like Brown inside the distance. And I heard a rumor that Brown is your ass shaving of the week, Weezy. So I liked it even better now. So let's go TJ Brown.
Dude, look at all that green there, Brady. I mean, that's just telling us that it loves the fight doesn't go. And here's why. 28 of 37 wins for Nuerdanbieke inside the distance. And for TJ Brown, man, it's 13 out of 16, even a better percentage. So these guys, out of 53 wins, over 75% have been inside the distance. Out of 18 losses, over 75% inside the distance. So 55 of 71 pro fights, 77.5% implied probability. Dude, that's like minus 350. Like that's what a minus 350 sits right around 78% implied probability, I think. So we're talking about, a line that should be up there, and we're getting plus 150. But see, here's the problem. As we go from the overall finish rates where we have all this green, and we go over here now to the UFC finish rates, now we're seeing a lot of red and yellow because these guys aren't finishing at the UFC level at the same rate that they were finishing on the regional scene. And we can see here a problem that only 1 of 4 wins have been inside the distance and only 1 of 3 losses. So 2 of their 7 combined fights have finished inside the distance. That's 28.6%. The implied probability of the line at plus 150 is 40%. So we're overpaying by about 11.4% based on that number. And we're overpaying by about 14.6% when we take that 28.6% and we compare it to the 43.2% finish rate for this division, which is 145. So it doesn't like it as much. When we go down here to the fight goes to decision numbers, we see a lot more green here because 5 of their 7 combined UFC fights have went the distance. So the way that I looked at this fight was I don't see any finish potential here for Shayilan Nuerdanbieke at the UFC level. I mean, the guys that he's finishing are Chinese regional scene guys, and not only that, this guy's fighting sometimes 12 times in a year. So he's fighting other guys, who are coming from their second shift work job as the peanut guy, at the stadium down the street. And then they're going to a fight club and fighting some dude that night, and getting finished and getting their check and going home. So at the UFC level, if we were to consider just that experience, I think that the fight goes to decision is probably the better bet. However, that's juiced up to minus 180. I think the best bet here is that if there is a finish, it comes on the TJ Brown side. So I could look at that TJ Brown finish only prop, or just do TJ Brown inside the distance, because you'll get almost 2.5 to 1. And Nuerdanbieke has been finished in 8 of his 10 pro losses, and 6 of those are by submission. And TJ Brown, in addition to that, is the far better kickboxer here too, so he could absolutely get a knockout too. So inside the distance, TJ Brown is my pick. Plus 150, I think it's a decent bet, but I'd rather get plus 230 or plus 240 for TJ Brown inside the distance than plus 150 for fight doesn't go, because I don't see that much finishing potential for Shayilan here.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I kind of just wanted the extra safety because Brown has been finished a lot. I remember he got finished. I think he got guillotined from like side control against Jordan Griffin. So in the gas tank's not great for Jordan Brown. I mean, I just wanted to be extra safe there. But yeah, I think fight or the inside the distance for Brown's the best way. And then also the finish only for Brown, surprisingly, is only minus 200. That was interesting. I want to double check to see what that was on DraftKings. So best prices on BetOnline for the finish only for Brown. So, yep, I think Brown goes out there. I think he could either knock him out. I think he could submits him. And like you said, that finish prop for Brown is sitting at plus 240, plus 265. My goodness, on 5 dimes against a guy that has been finishing 8 of 10 losses. And I mean, we got to cut TJ Brown some slack. I mean, he couldn't finish Charles Rosa. Nobody finishes Charles Rosa. Shayilan is not Charles Rosa. He couldn't finish Kai Kamaka. Kai Kamaka's tough, and Brown was not able to hold him down on the mat. Other than that, I mean, this guy, TJ Brown's finishing everybody. So, yeah, I like Brown inside the distance. I think it's a very sneaky play this week at pretty good odds as well.
Yeah, and I like him for my ass shaving of the week, so I really do think he can dominate in this spot. It reminds me a lot of the Phil Hawes-Duran Wynn fight last week, where you've got this one-dimensional wrestler who's really good at winning minutes with his wrestling and his top control. But in this case, you know, he's not wrestling somebody with no wrestling background. He's wrestling a guy in TJ Brown who's a really good MMA wrestler who didn't grow up wrestling, but he's got good MMA wrestling and, more importantly, really good submission grappling. I mean, if you're hanging on the ground with Charles Rosa, you can hang on the ground with Shayilan Nuerdanbieke. That's for sure. I mean, there's a big difference between the guys that Charles Rosa has fought in comparison to the guys that Shayilan has fought, guys like Yibu Gale and, you know, Terragini. And I mean, these, you know, Chinese Greco-Roman champions, like I say, that get bodied by high school kids in Pennsylvania. So, yeah, I am going with TJ Brown inside the distance via ass shaving, Brady. Let's go. Let's get it.
Yep, and it's probably going to be that arm triangle as well that he had Rosa and Nuerdanbieke. I don't think he survives that. But, yeah, I think he does shave some ass there. Let's keep moving on. We have Tafon and Nchukwi going against Carlos Ulberg. We have the over-under is set at it's 1.5 and 2.5. The over 1.5 is minus 175. The under 1.5 is plus 145. The over 2.5 plus 110. The under 2.5 minus 130. That's 5 dimes. And then the fight goes to decision. Plus 160, and the fight doesn't go to decision. Minus 200, best line. Looks like minus 163, minus 190 on DraftKings. This one's kind of a tricky one, Weezy. I kind of see this one going to decision in terms of my analysis. I'm curious to see if the numbers do line up on that, because we're paying a decent amount of juice on this fight doesn't go here.
Yeah, and the problem is that we don't have a lot of data here, Brady. We've only got 13 combined pro fights for these two guys. So 8 of 13 of them have finished inside the distance. That's 61.5%. That's 4% worse than the implied probability of the line for this thing to finish inside the distance, and 4.1% better than the finish rate for the division at 205, which is 57.43%. So if we go over here to our UFC data, we see that half of these guys' fights have finished inside the distance. And we're paying 65% on the fight doesn't go line here. So the prop template, 50% is worse than the 57% divisional finish rate. It's 15% worse than the implied probability of the line at 65%. And, you know, it's way worse than this 50% here. So this 50% is worse than this 65% and worse than this 57%. So we're definitely overpaying for fight doesn't go here. Fight goes at plus 160 has a implied probability of 38.5%. So we're getting an 11.5% break on the implied probability of the line, 7.4% break on the divisional decision rate, which is sitting right around 42.6%. And these guys have went to decision in 4 of 8 fights. In addition to that, I don't see either one of these guys getting a submission. You know, I mean, it could happen, but neither one of these guys are big offensive grapplers or control time guys. So, you know, you kind of got to figure if this fight's going to end, it's probably going to end by knockout. So if you have the indication that you think that this fight is going to finish inside the distance, maybe save a little money by picking fight ends by knockout. But the prop template here actually likes the plus money on fight doesn't go to, or fight goes to decision at plus 160. and maybe the over 2.5 at plus 110. That's a little bit overpriced here at 3%, but the Fight Goes is still underpriced at plus 160 by 4.11% when we compare it to the divisional decision rate of 42.57%. So I like the Fight Goes here.
Yeah, I think that's what I'd play if anything, but I already have a bet on this fight. I don't really want to get too much involved, but yeah, I'd definitely lean that plus 160. If there is a finish, I mean, I don't know. Both guys hit hard. Maybe Ulberg gasses out again. I'm just kind of like really strongly leaning that decision, and even like the decision props for both guys are just nuts. Ulberg by decision plus 390, and Nchukwi by decision plus 390. That opened up at plus 460 and Nchukwi by decision. Ooh. So, yeah, those decision props are pretty juicy, and I'm kind of leaning that way as well.
Yeah, but these guys, these 205ers, they hit hard. When you're betting overs in those fights, it's a sweat. It's a big time sweat, especially somebody like Tafon, who's just this unit. And then Ulberg's got some really fancy kicks, some really good technical boxing and kickboxing. So, yeah, I think I'm leaning Fight Goes here. Am I running to the window to bet that? I don't think so, man. Maybe the over 2.5, if I can get a little bit fatter plus money on than plus 110, maybe I'll try that. But I'm leaning over. The prices are pushing me towards the over bets and the Fight Goes bets, but I'm not running to the window here.
Yep, you won't see me running to the window really on any over unless like really sticks out. But yeah, plus 110 looks like the best price out there on that over 2.5 on DraftKings Sportsbook, and then it's on 5 dimes as well. So yeah, lean over, but I'm with you, not really running to the window. I'll move on to the next fight, and we have a banger. We have Chris Curtis going against Rodolfo Vieira, and we have the over-under is set at 1.5. The over 1.5 is plus 125. The under 1.5 is minus 155. The fight goes to decision plus 475. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 750. And look at this on FanDuel Sportsbook. They have the fight goes to decision at plus 500, and the fight doesn't go to decision at minus 900. I'm not sure if it's like Francis Ngannou going against JP Bays. I'm not sure why it's minus 900. I mean, I think it finishes, but my goodness, minus 900 just nuts, Weezy.
It is. But, we always talk about the killer be killed fighter here on probability, and we've got that. We've got Rodolfo Vieira with 9 professional fights, and all 9 of them have finished inside the distance. 8 wins, 1 loss. So, but the thing is that Chris Curtis has had a pretty long career as a professional mixed martial artist, and this guy is not a killer be killed fighter on the aggregate. At the UFC level, his fights are finishing inside the distance, but this guy's barely above 53% here for total finish rate. 17 of 28 wins, 60% inside the distance, but only 2 of 8 losses. And one of those 8 losses was a loss where he had already fought that day. And the other one was like, I don't know if it was a rear naked choke by Tom Galicchio. I forget if that was the guy who submitted him, but it was over 10 years ago. So Chris Curtis is a very durable fighter. Now, Rodolfo Vieira is a killer be killed fighter. So, obviously we're looking whenever we have killer be killed for the fight doesn't go, but the line isn't bettable. We're not in the habit of betting lines that have an 88.24% implied probability. That means if we're right 9 out of 10 times over a very long sample size, we'll be 1.7% return on investment, which leaves us no room for error, So it's just not something. And look, this line at 88.24%, these fights at 185 are only finishing 55% of the time. So we're overpaying. This number compared to this number is a 33% overpayment on our parts. The over 2.5 is a 28% overpayment. The over 1.5 is actually an 18% underpayment, which is the over 1.5 plus money?
The over 1.5 is plus 125.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, the under 1.5 is we're overpaying by 23% there. So, This number here is interesting. 28 of 45 of their combined pro fights have finished inside the distance. That's only 62%. And we're paying 88% at minus 750. So that's a 26% overpayment. But at the UFC level, 7 of 7 fights have finished inside the distance. And even then, we're still only getting a 12% deal over the books at 100% finish rate. So it's not bettable for fight doesn't go. If you want to bet a fight goes or an over 2.5, it's not necessarily the worst thing. We could work with something like that. Just because it's such a huge plus number, that we might as well give it a shot. Plus 500 at fight goes. I mean, fight goes to decision in this division 44% of the time. We're only paying 16% of the time. We just got to hope, that it winds up being a slower paced fight than everyone thinks it will. That Curtis will be really afraid about the takedown attempts of Vieira, so maybe he won't be committing to his punches. And Vieira will be so worried about an uppercut on the way in on a takedown attempt that maybe he'll just stay at kicking range. So you never know. But we can't really bet minus 750 lines. So it kind of pushes us to where maybe we just play a variance play on the big plus money number and maybe look like a genius if it hits.
Yeah, for sure. We've seen it happen before, like these fights where we're like, okay, there's no way Bruno Silva, Pereira goes the distance, and then it goes the distance. I mean, it wouldn't complete, like this wouldn't shock, like this would be less of a shock than that Bruno Silva going the distance, honestly. Like Curtis has won a lot of decisions. He's won 11 decisions in his career. But yeah, Vieira, never been the distance, win or loss. I think it does finish, but you're just paying a ton. I found this interesting. They have the decision only for Chris Curtis. Guess what the line is on it? Decision only, Chris Curtis.
Chris Curtis. Minus 180.
Plus 100.
Really? Yeah, maybe they're thinking that if it does go the 3 rounds that Vieira gets takedowns, and gets on top but doesn't finish. So maybe that's what they're thinking there, but that's interesting because Rodolfo Vieira's never won a decision, and Chris Curtis has won almost, 10?
Yeah, 11.
11? So yeah, I mean that's a good look there. These kind of time props are basically unbettable. I don't see this fight going to decision,
Yeah. And then, we talked about this earlier, like Chris Curtis on the money line is minus 117, but you're actually paying more for his knockout prop at minus 120. Curtis inside the distance, minus 115. These are crazy. Like you're paying I don't know, there's no value on any of these props. Unless you even the round props, like even Vieira round 1 is only plus 340. Curtis round 3 is plus 600 on Bet Online. I'm not joking. So yeah, they're just all over this one.
Yeah, they see, you could tell, because even when a fight goes to say minus 600 for a fight doesn't go to decision, you won't see 5 dimes opening it at minus 675. You know what I'm saying? They'll open it at minus 350, minus 400, and then the money will push it there. These guys flat out opened. This fight doesn't go at minus 675, Brady. It's just their way of telling us, look, our model says this thing finishes inside the distance every goddamn time, and we don't want your fucking money on this bet. So that's what they told us.
Yeah, people in the chat saying that Chris Curtis broke his hands or his wrist. That's not good. I wonder if that's true.
Did that? Oh, shit.
Oh, they said they broke it in the Allen fight. That was a while ago, though.
Yeah, that was a while ago. But, yeah, look, he's not getting cleared to fight with a broken wrist. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah.
So he's got to be healthy. You always have to assume, especially when it comes to somebody's hands, that if they're going in with if the commission is letting them fight, then their hands aren't broken.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. They're not letting them fight with broken hands. So Chris will be fine.
Yeah, he should be fine. He was supposed to fight against Duplessis and had to pull out. So that's what it was. Yeah, that was a month ago, something like that.
Yeah, that's right.
He'll be good.
I forgot about that.
All right. All right. We have the next fight here. We have the Umar Nurmagomedov going against Nate Maness. We have the over-under set at 1.5 rounds. The over 1.5 minus 155. The under 1.5 plus 125. The fight goes to decision plus 160. The fight doesn't go to decision minus 200. Best price is minus 160 actually on 5 dimes. I do have a bet on this fight. I have the under 2.5, and I think it's still there. Bovada put it at minus 120, which shocked me because you take a look at Nurmagomedov inside the distance right now is minus 175. So I had to jump on that. And yeah, I think Nurmagomedov finishes this fight. I think once he does get down Maness, the fight's going to be over shortly after. Nurmagomedov's grappling is no joke. But instead of laying minus 175 on Nurmagomedov, why not lay that minus 120 on the under 2.5 to cover both sides? Because I don't want to completely roll out Nate Maness, although he's a huge underdog. I mean, this guy has power in his hands. This is a guy that I keep counting out, and he keeps winning. And it takes one shot, and Maness hits like a truck. So I think it covers both sides there rather than, laying minus 175, minus 177 under Nurmagomedov inside the distance. I think the better route is just playing that under 2.5 at a much, much better number there. So that's kind of how I played it. I'm curious to see where the numbers are on this one, Weezy.
Yeah, so 4 of their 5 UFC fights are finished inside the distance. That's 80%. That's 30% better than the divisional finish rate, which is 49.44%. We got that over here. And it's 14.5% better than the implied probability of the line, which is 65.5%. So that we're overpaying here. 65% compared to this 49.4, we're overpaying by 16%. And then we can also look, both of these guys' numbers are pretty much the same. They both have 14 wins. They both have 8 finishes in 14 wins. Nate Maness is the only one who's lost. He lost inside the distance in his only loss. 17 of 29 combined fights finishing inside the distance, 58.6%. That means we're overpaying by about 7% on this fight doesn't go. And we're actually getting a 9% break on the divisional finish rate of 49.44%. So not much UFC data to go on here, but when we use our eyes, we see that Umar is very good everywhere, and that Maness, even in the fights that he's won and finished, has been in trouble prior to finishing the fights. In the Munoz fight, he was in a whole heap of trouble in that first round. Gravely, if there's 5 more seconds left in that first round, that fight is finished. I really got to believe that Umar probably gets this done inside the distance. Fight doesn't go at minus 190. What's the under 2.5 at?
Bovada is minus 120 as far as I'm concerned, and then 5 dimes is minus 135.
Okay.
And
so
then
check this out, right?
Yeah.
49.4% of fights are finishing inside the distance. This 43.12% number here, that's the under 2.5. So there's about a 6% difference. Here, we're getting about 8% difference from the under 2.5 compared to the fight doesn't go. So that's a little bit of a break. I would rather hit that under 2.5 at minus 135, or if you have Bovada at minus 120, that looks so much better just based on how many fights finish in that last 2.5 minutes. In this division, it's 6%, but here you're getting an 8% break from moving down. So I would say that would probably be the best way. Save those extra 55 cents and hit the minus 135 compared to the minus 190, because in my opinion, this thing finishes probably in the first or the second round.
Yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing. I think the under 1.5 hits, and that's plus money. But I'd rather get that extra round, the under 2.5, at minus 120, minus 135 on 5 dimes, and then it's minus 150 on DraftKings. So DraftKings with the worst line out there, and then minus 163 on Betway. So yep, I like it. I like me some violence, and it should be a good fight. I'm looking forward to see if the minus 1,200 favorite can get it done and see how he looks. We'll move on to the next fight, and this is probably the toughest fight to call on the card from a time prop perspective. I don't know if you agree, but we have Christos Giagos going against Thiago Moises. We have the over-under set at minus or 2.5. The over 2.5 minus 130. The under 2.5 plus 100. The fight goes to decision minus 115. The fight doesn't go to decision minus 115. So kind of a pick 'em there. And yeah, I agree. I mean, I can see it finishing. I can see it go the distance. I mean, there's no really one strong lean for me one way or another. So I'm curious to see where the numbers line up on this one, Weezy.
Yeah, and these lightweight fights are finishing about half the time, 50.8% they finish, 49.13% they don't. And these guys have had 49 combined professional fights. They're finishing inside the distance about 57% of the time. And in their UFC experience, it's 9 of 19 that have finished inside the distance. So they're finishing inside the distance at 47.5%, about 3% worse than the 50.8% benchmark of the division. The line to finish inside the distance, 53.5%. So we're overpaying a little bit by about 6% based on this 47% number, and about 3.5% based on this 50.87% number. And we see here that all these are priced up pretty good according to the benchmarks, which tells you that Vegas doesn't really have an idea whether this thing is going over or under either. They're just kind of pricing it with where the benchmarks for the division are and putting the implied probability of the lines in there, so they got a little bit of a vig on both of it. And we look down here at the decision numbers here, and it's the same thing, Brady. A little bit better on fight goes to decision here, as we see 52.6% of their fights have went to decision. That's a 3.5% better than the divisional decision rate, and it's 1.7% better than the divisional than the implied probability of the line of the fight going to decision. So it looks pretty fairly priced. It looks like your edge is going to be with fight goes to decision rather than fight doesn't go. But this thing is priced up pretty good. And I think Moises is more likely to finish than Giagos is. But, the time props are really not that interesting to me.
Yeah, and I think if it finishes, it's probably Moises. I'd be really surprised if Giagos finished Moises. The finish only for Moises minus 300 on BetOnline, and on DraftKings it is minus 360. So yeah, they're all over it. I mean, there's nothing really sticks out on this fight, Weezy. So I think we can move on to the next fight. We have the people's main event. We have Elon Badou going against Josh Perisian, the fight everybody's looking forward to. The over-under is set at 1.5. The over 1.5 is minus 185. The under 1.5 is plus 155. The fight goes to decision is plus 140. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 160. And this is a weird one, Weezy, because everybody thinks this fight's going the distance. I'm not sure if you do or not. I forget, but I think it's going the distance. And everything I've heard is about this fight going the distance, but I kind of feel like it wouldn't shock me if this fight finished, just because you take a look at their finish rates and both guys are finishers. Elon Badou's finished all but one of his wins, and the one win that he did not finish was a DQ win because his opponent popped for marijuana. And then Josh Perisian, I think, has only won one decision, and that decision win is probably a fight that he lost. And on top of that, you take a look at a lot of their fights, and a lot of their fights in the UFC have kind of played, in the clinch, against the cage, on the mat. I don't see either guy really doing that to the other guy. So I kind of think they're going to stand and bang. At the end of the day, these guys are heavyweights. So I kind of feel like fight doesn't go is going to be a very sneaky look. And it might be something to even take a look at later in the week, as money's pouring in on the overs. And I get it. It makes sense. I think it does go the distance, but I kind of have a sneaky feeling this does finish. And yeah, like I said, money's pouring in on the overs. The fight doesn't go minus 150, minus 160. I'm curious to see where these numbers line up, Weezy.
Yeah, I mean, these guys are finishers, like you said, man. 19 of the 22 combined wins coming inside the distance. That's almost 87%. And then 6 of 9 losses. So that's 66%. 25 of their 31 combined pro fights have finished inside the distance. That's 80.6%. So that's 19% better than the implied probability of the line, which is sitting around 60%, and 16.7% better than the divisional finish rate, which is just under 64% on the long term for 3-round fights. And then if we look at the UFC numbers here, in 8 total fights, 5 of them have finished inside the distance. That's a 1% break over the implied probability of the line at 61.54%, and a 1.4% overpayment based on the divisional finish rate of 63.93%. So, yeah, the thing is like, these guys, Elon Badou is finishing Japanese professional wrestlers who decided to give MMA a shot once or twice. And then Perisian, while landing those spinning fat fists and the spinning fat kicks, has knocked out some lower level regional mixed martial artists and a couple guys on the Contender series. But Chad Johnson's like a 205er, and Greg Rebello is just a journeyman, not really much of a fighter. So I've seen Parisian be Parisian's got no quit in him, period. I think that if somebody gets a finish in this fight, it's probably Parisian, just because Parisian, the one thing that you cannot say about this guy is that he doesn't have heart. He's got heart and he's got toughness. He's been finished in 3 of his 5 losses, but you need to kill this dude to get him out of there. And Baudot is not going to get this guy on the ground and ground and pound him out. He's going to have to knock him out standing, and you need a shovel to knock out Josh Parisian. The line seems pretty fairly priced. I mean, you don't see a lot of heavyweight fights where you're getting a break over the divisional finish rate here. We're only paying 61.5%, and these fights are finishing at 64%. And they're also finishing inside the distance 62% so far at the UFC level. So it seems like if you want to take that fight doesn't go at -160, it's bettable. It's not overpriced here. And neither one of these guys has been what we would call traditionally durable, as they're getting finished in their fights 66% of the time. And both of these guys are finishing their wins. But it's just Baudot's wins. I mean, he's fighting. I mean, he fought guys like me. If you saw my name in a mixed martial arts fight, it probably would be against Elon Badou, and I'd probably last about a round and a half.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he looked good against Nascimento, almost finished him in the first round. But outside of that, his last win was against Todd Stout, where he literally got submitted, which is the weirdest thing.
And when you look a little bit deeper, the guys that train with Todd Stout were saying they were laughing their asses off when they saw him get a submission. They're like, that's the first submission we've seen this guy even get in practice. So that was a wild one. And he popped for marijuana, and evidently there was so much marijuana in his system that the commission had come to the conclusion that he had smoked right before the fight. And they considered that a performance enhancer, and they overturned his win to a loss. It's bizarre. It's bizarre. It's you don't hear stories like that very often, but it's one of those funny ones that you kind of need to know the details to find out. Wow, how the hell did this guy Baudot get in the UFC? Who's he friends with? Well, it turns out he's friends with Francis Ngannou.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's gonna be a fun fight, though. Kinda. I mean, it's battle for who is the worst heavyweight fighter now that Hunsucker moved down to 205. It's now between these guys, Baudot, Parisian. So I might just sit back and watch. I'll see where the line. I mean, if it got to plus money for some reason, then maybe I'd take a look at it. But I'm not laying the -160 on that fight. Doesn't go. We can move on to the next fight that we have, the co-main event. We have Shavkat Rakhmonov going against Neil Magny. We have the over-under is set at 2.5 rounds mostly. We have the over 2.5 +115. Under 2.5 is -145. The fight goes to decision is +155, and the fight doesn't go to decision is -190. This is kind of like the Fry Demopoulos fight in a way, where I think if there is a finish in this fight, it's going to be on the Rakhmonov side. This guy has a 100% finish rate. Mag's been finished in 6 out of 8 losses. And what I did was I played Shavkat inside the distance at -130. It's still -135 out there. I think he does finish Magny. But yeah, if Magny wins, it's probably by decision. Magny by decision is +500. Magny decision only, I think we talked about, is only +165. But yeah, I guess it just depends who you like. If you like Shavkat inside the distance, probably the way to go. And if you like Magny decisions, probably the way to go. Kind of one of those, Weezy.
Exactly. I mean, you look at Magny here. This is in the UFC, right? In the wins, only 6 of 18 wins inside the distance, but 5 of 7 losses. So, his fights are finishing inside the distance less than half the time. So that would get you thinking, okay, you got to like the over here. But then you got a killer be killed fighter here in Shavkat Rakhmonov. 15 wins, all 15 inside the distance, and he's never been finished and never lost. So we've got a killer be killed fighter against a decisionator, which tells us that the time props are a little bit useless. Are you thinking that Neil Magny gets a finish against Shavkat Rakhmonov? Probably not. So why that fight doesn't go to decision here at minus 190 when you can get Shavkat inside the distance at minus 130? And I was hoping, Brady, that I would be able to find Neil Magny decision only at plus 200 or better, but they were all over it. They did not let your Uncle Weezy have that little victory. And I mean, shame on DraftKings Sportsbook for being way ahead of that and disappointing me with a terrible line for the Magny decision only prop. I think maybe I might put a quarter unit on Magny by decision here, but I think Shavkat inside the distance is the call. That's my prediction. It's just that if this fight does go to decision, I think it's going to be Magny winning minutes. Yeah. And I would rather bet Magny by decision at plus 500 than fight goes to decision at plus 155. And I would also rather bet Shavkat Rakhmonov inside the distance at minus 130 rather than the fight doesn't go to decision at minus 190.
Yep, I think those are the two ways to play it. Shavkat inside the distance, Magny by decision. The finish only for Shavkat's minus 450 on BetOnline. It's minus 1100 on DraftKings Sportsbook, and it's definitely.
Man, those pricks, dude.
Minus 1100, which is a 91.7 implied probability.
Wow. Yeah, they're telling you they don't want your money on that bet. You know,
they don't.
You can't even parlay it at that price. That takes your minus 150 down to minus 146. You know, it's just you're not getting much better there. So yeah, wow, that's rough, dude.
Absolutely. And even like the BetOnline minus 450 and finish only. BetOnline, you can't parlay props, so they got you there as well. So
yeah, man. Yeah. So this is one. It's definitely a stay away.
Absolutely. Next fight, we have the main event. We have Arman Tsarukyan going against Mateusz Gamrot. And my favorite part of the show, Weezy, as always, is going to be looking at the difference between the 3-round fights and the 5-round fights and seeing how those analytics really change. We have the over-under is set at 4.5 rounds. The over 4.5 is minus 120. The under 4.5 is minus 110. The fight goes to decision minus 105. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 125 on BetOnline. Looks like it's minus 105 on 5 Dimes and Betway. And money is pouring in on these fight goes to decisions and the overs. I did bet the over 2.5 rounds. Kind of my analysis. I think the fight does get extended, but I think there is a very good opportunity here for a late finish, especially with the kind of pace I expect in this fight. So I have the over 2.5. I got it at minus 170. That line's been smashed. Looks like minus 210. I might even add on to that fight doesn't go to decision if it does get the plus money, because I think a late finish is very much on the table here. So, Weezy, let's talk about these analytics and what do they say?
Yeah, so 50.87% is the finish rate for 155-pound 3-round fights. So if we were to compare the current lines for the fight doesn't go to decision for 3-round fights, we're going to see lines that are priced up pretty good here, right? 54.55% is the implied probability of minus 120. So we're overpaying by about 3.68% based on that 50.87% number there. And then these guys are finishing inside the distance 5 of their 10 combined UFC fights. So that's, once again, we're overpaying by about 4.5% based on the implied probability of the line. And it's right on the divisional finish rate of 50.87%. So for 3-round fights, we're overpaying just a smidge for the minus 120. But let's look at 5-round fights. And what I have here is all lightweight fights. Let me zoom in on this a little bit more. So this is just lightweight fights here between the year 2013 and 2022. There have been 43 of them, Brady. How many have finished inside the distance? Well, I have them sorted by how long it took for the fight to finish here. So we can see here that 31, I have a count number here of 31 of these 43 fights have finished inside the distance. That's 72%. Now we're looking at a divisional finish rate of 50%, right? But 5-round fights are finishing in the 155-pound division 22% more often than they are when they're 3-round fights. So putting that number in here, we can now see that at a 54% implied probability of minus 120, we're actually getting a 17.5% break on the implied probability of the line when we compare it to the 5-round benchmark for lightweight fights finishing. 72% is statistically significant, and it's alarmingly higher than the 50.87% finish rate we see for 3-round fights. So when I see a divergence that big, it's screaming bet that fight doesn't go to decision.
Yep, and I'm just waiting for it to get to plus money. Looks like it's almost plus money on a couple books there. Yeah, minus 105 on 2 different books. So what would just curious, what would a plus 100 do? That'd be a 50%.
Yeah, 50% implied probability. Then, if we're looking at for fight doesn't go, you're saying plus 100?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, at 50, that would be 0.87% better than the 50.87% finish rate. But actually, it would be 22% better than that 72% finish rate we're talking about for 5-round fights, Brady. And then we compare that here, 50% of their fights have finished inside the distance, but 72% is the benchmark. We're getting a 22% break over that as well. So it just makes it that this minus 120, which is where I bet it on FanDuel Sportsbook, is a great look here, and it's something that I think is even worth a straight bet.
Yeah, it's going to be something I'm waiting for. I'm going to wait till probably fight day. I think this line continues to move. Looks like money's still pouring in on the fight goes to decision. So, yeah, I mean, if I get that plus money, I'm definitely going to take that. Even like minus 105, that's really good as well, although I don't have access to it on 5Dimes or Betway. So, yeah, I think that is a solid look there. I'm hoping it does go over 2.5, and I'm hoping it's a late finish, 3, 4, 5. I think those are definitely on the table, and I think they're on the table for, like I think Mushroom said it, Arman Tsarukyan. I'm kind of leaning Arman Tsarukyan. Either decision or late finish there. So I think that's those 5-round stats are extremely interesting to look at.
They really are, because it just tells you that extra 10 minutes means something, and you sometimes you need those numbers right in front of your face to realize how important they are. And sometimes, just knowing the difference between the 3-round and the 5-round finish rates can just make you make those bets with a much higher degree of confidence, in terms of what it is that you're looking for, where you define value, and then being able to find those spots that stick out and hammer them.
Absolutely. I mean, if we're talking about those 5-round analytics, like we're getting a steal even at the minus 120. But I feel like it's going to get better, so I'm just going to keep waiting it out, see where it gets to. But yeah, do like that, Weezy. So we did it. We covered all 12 fights. Was there any spots that were really sticking out? And let's try to get a PP going. Our PPs keep getting ruined by these overs. I think we had the over in the Chase Hooper fight, we had the over in the Zhang Wei Li fight, we had the over in the Blanchfield fight, and then the over in the Tony Kelly fight. So they're just these overs are getting smashed. So is there anything sticking out for a PP? We need to hit one. I think we started out pretty good. We've gone like kind of skid here.
Yeah, we definitely have. There have been a lot of firsts, and when we're looking at the data and we're trying to go with where the data is telling us we have an advantage, what we have to hope doesn't happen is regression back towards the mean. And that's what's been happening lately. Between Aldrich and Blanchfield, 2 of 12 fights had finished inside the distance, and then now it's 3 of 13. It's just how it goes sometimes. But what I saw, Brady, was Kelleher Bautista at minus 120, fight doesn't go. Bayes Durden minus 110, fight doesn't go. I was looking at the finish onlys for Demopoulos, for Morozov, for Rakhmonov. And I also like the fight doesn't go for that main event. It's sitting at minus 120. We got a nice little analytical edge there. So I'd be interested. And maybe we could put 2 of these together. But and then also the Shayilan TJ Brown fight doesn't go, even though I think it's kind of skewed towards Brown getting that finish. We have to keep in mind that 14 of 18 combined fights for these guys have finished inside the distance. So I think that's a really good look as well.
Goodness, man, this is I mean, there's a lot of great straight betting options. I have a straight bet on a lot of these. In terms of a parlay, Tsarukyan Gamrot fight doesn't go. Parlayed with the Cody Durden fight doesn't go. That's -1. That's plus 244 for those two. What was the other one?
I was looking at Kelleher Bautista, but I'm not as sold on that one. Kelleher's been wrestling a lot lately, you know.
Yeah, that one's tricky. The Morozov one's tricky.
Yeah,
we can't parlay the Curtis one.
No, we can't. We can't do it, dude. We can't. Maybe if we could find the under 2.5, maybe putting that in. But even then, that's like what, -400, -5. You know, it's
-450. Yeah.
Gee, fuck that. Let's parlay Baze Durden with the main event. Do violence in both. This way, we can at least say it won't be an over that fucked us this week.
Yeah, let's exactly. Let's get some violence, and hopefully we don't get fucked on it. But yeah, would rather be fucked on some violence than an over again. So yeah, I do like that. Plus 244. The fight doesn't go. -110 for Durden. The fight doesn't go in the main event. -125 for a grand total of plus 244. I think I would probably get on that now because I see the Durden line moving the other way. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I think the main event fight doesn't go sticks out. I'm gonna sit back and wait on that one. Wait till fight day. I think the Durden one sticks out as well. I like the Brown one as well. Brown inside the distance. And then I like the Umar under 2.5. If you guys can get that on Baudot at -120, I think that's a good look. But yeah, lots of spots sticking out. Not really many like parlay pieces sticking out, but spots in general are sticking out.
Usually we get those parlay pieces where it's like, yeah, this is priced at -220, but it should be priced at -400. So let's go, let's hammer it. But this is one where like these time props are sitting right in the middle, so it's hard to find two that to parlay. But really, that Baze Durden stuck out, and the analytics for the 5-round as opposed to the 3-round fights for the main event really stick out. And I think that one, you know, those are two good spots where we're getting killer be killed, you know, fighters, really strong technical fighters there to finish fights.
Yep, exactly. And I'll be on both of those straight as well. So I do like those. But yeah, Weezy, we did it. 12 fights. I'm going to kick it to you. Let the people know where they can find you and what you have going on throughout the week. I believe you are done for content for the week this week.
Yeah, done for content this week, but you can find me right here on the MMA Engine YouTube channel. We've got a bunch of new stuff coming out, putting out a lot of great content on this channel. You can find me on my channel, Uncle Weezy. That is YouTube's favorite channel to discuss MMA with YouTube's favorite uncle, me, Uncle Weezy. So you can find me there. I just put out my Greasy 4-Leg Parlay on that channel today. Check that out. Just the Tip is out. Ask Weezy is out. And then you can find me on Pub Sports Radio every Wednesday for the DFS show with Brady, every Saturday for the Watch Along with Boston Nick and the guys, and every Sunday for Stat Diggers, 6:15 Central Time. And we'll be talking about this pay-per-view coming up next week, Brady, this Sunday. So you can check me out in all those places. And then the only thing that we have left to do, you guys, is to stack cash tickets like flapjacks for UFC Vegas 57. Let's get it.
Let's do it. And by the way, yeah, next week's pay-per-view is freaking stacked. And I don't know if you guys saw, they added the Donald Cerrone Jim Miller fight for next week. So you bet your ass we'll be back here next Thursday talking about some violence for that fight. So yeah, I can't wait for that, guys. Follow me on Twitter, DFS_numbers, Instagram, DFS by the numbers. And yeah, we'll see you guys tomorrow on the MMA Engine YouTube channel for my live stream after the weigh-ins. And then back Saturday on my channel, DFS by the numbers for Best Bet with Uncle Weezy, Eric, and Narco Cop. And then back on Sunday for some stat diggers for UFC. I believe it's 276. So we'll talk to you guys very soon. Leave a like on your way out. And best of luck for UFC Vegas 57. Let us